folks. Welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, it's good to be back with you, man. It's been a sec. We've had some vacation time to get through some other things, but here we are again on the eve of the Lions OTA, maybe the day before the OTA, right? They start back Thursday. Tomorrow we'll get to see the rookies again. And
well, the OTAs have been going on. We just get to see them for the first time.
We get to see them. We get to see them. So we're gonna spend a decent amount of this podcast today talking about the Lions. We're gonna get into the Pistons a little bit later, and the owner of the Pistons, who just seems to have limitless, bottomless pockets, and is throwing around just crazy figures to go get a GM. We all know he did that last year to get a coach. We'll talk about that. Of course, I don't even know that you and I have talked together since the lottery happened. I don't know that the lottery matters that much this year in terms of the draft, but we'll get into that a little bit. But look, it's good to see you. And I saw I want to tell the listener, when we get here on Zoom, you and I can see each other. And I can see the top of your T-shirt. I'm like, that looks suspiciously like an Edmonton Oilers T-shirt. And listen, remember, this guy is an L.A. soul and a diehard Kings fan, Los Angeles Kings fan. And the Kings have lost to the Oilers, the last 2 seasons in the playoffs?
3 straight seasons in the first round.
3 straight seasons, and he's wearing an Edmonton Oilers T-shirt. That's like a Michigan fan wearing a Michigan State T-shirt.
No, Ohio State.
Name you, or a Lions fan all of a sudden putting a Packers jersey on, whatever. So explain, you were telling me right before we started recording the reason behind this, but I want to hear the listeners hear your rationale and your fandom.
Yeah, I love the Kings. I hate the Oilers. I've hated them since the 80s. They were in the Smythe division, and you had to fight your way out of the division in the playoffs back then, and we would always lose to the Oilers. And however, this is not just an Oilers shirt. It's a Grant Fuhr shirt. So he was, when I first started getting into hockey in the 80s, I loved the way he played. I love that he was, one of the only black players in the NHL at the time, but he was just fun to watch. He was acrobatic. He had to stop a bunch of shots because they were an offensive powerhouse, but didn't play a lot of defense. I just was drawn to his style of play. And I always liked it. But I do have another 1 or 2 other throwback. I have a Ken Dryden jersey. I've always had he started me on my path of just liking goalies and kind of feeling sorry for them because they have to sit there and take the worst of it all the time and they get beat up and everything. And by the way, if you ever go to the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto, go check out the goalie exhibit. It's really cool. They have all the masks and all that. So tribute to the great Grant Fuhr.
I'm embarrassed to say, or maybe I'm not, I don't know, because I'm going to say it, but I feel like I was near the Hockey Hall of Fame. I've been to Toronto in a minute, but I was up there for work one time covering a Hall of Fame induction, so that would have taken me to the Hall of Fame, but I don't remember that exhibit. I'm trying to remember who it was for. I was filling in for somebody.
Scotty?
The last minute.
Brendan Shanahan?
Maybe, I think it was Brendan Shanahan.
Probably.
But God, that's terrible. It's been a while. So, but in any case, no, I've not seen the Freddy Cougar exhibit up at the NHL Hall of Fame. All right. I guess that's an explanation. I don't know. I wonder why your skin's not on fire right now. I can't imagine what your LA Kings comrades back in LA.
Well, one of my good friends, longtime friends in LA, and he's a diehard Kings fan too. And I told him about it just to get his reaction, and he couldn't believe it. But the one little caveat is Grant Fuhr played like 10 games for the Kings at the very end of his career. So I called him, Kings great, Grant Fuhr. And he's like, yeah, I don't know about that, but I guess if he spent a minute with the Kings, I guess it's okay.
So those 10 games, those 10 games make it okay.
They make it okay.
Well,
yeah.
Hey man, fandom is fandom, and we do all sorts of metal twists. We take turns. We rationalize. We justify. There's not a lot of logic involved oftentimes in fandom, which we're grateful for, because if there were, why would sports departments even exist?
Exactly.
There'd be no reason for that. So, all right, let's get into the Lions. You were out there recently. Tell me what you expect tomorrow as we get back into OTAs.
I was out there for one day of rookie minicamp, so let me predict the whole season for you, Shawn. I'm going to break down every player, every position, roster, depth chart. No. Who knows? These guys are in pajamas again. They're There are no helmets, no pads. Helmets and no pads. No tackling. No tackling is what they are. They can do 7-on-7. They can do team drills. It's just a look at where guys fit. I think Dave Burkett had a little preview recently in the Free Press about the OTAs, organized team activities for everybody. They just run around. The coaches get a look. They see where they may fit, where they may need some help. In rookie minicamp, that's one thing we saw was, one of the cornerbacks they drafted, Ennis Rakestraw, he spent time in slot. They may have to move him around depending on what their safety situation is with Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, who are both dealing with some kind of injuries or coming back from, I think, hip surgery for Joseph. So what do I expect? I expect people to say how fast you get the media. It's the typical media thing. Every time you see these guys running around, oh my God, look at how fast they are. Oh, they're so fast. Yeah, they're in pajamas. Nobody can touch them. That's why they look fast. So, and strong and big and all that stuff. Great. It doesn't really matter until you put the pads on. Then it really matters. And then even when you get into game speed too, against opponents, when you can, tackle and go for real. But just a quick look-see from the coaches, see how they're doing. We'll see Laporta, we'll see Jimmy Gibbs, we'll see maybe Hutchinson, we'll see all these guys, Jared Goff, we'll see, a quick little preview. But what are you expecting out there? Is there anything you're looking for?
Well, first of all, I'm trying to figure out if you said look-see, look-see, or look-see, like, hey, look at the look-see, or I'm going to go get some sleep-sees or something like that. I'm trying to figure out how you meant that. No, in all seriousness, you're right. It's a little bit like spring training baseball. You just somebody can look great and the games start. And you're like, oh, okay, well now that they're facing actual pitching, and they're not just guys up there on the mound experimenting, trying to get their arms ramped up and so forth. But I don't know. There are a few things, little things you can tell. You're right. You can't tell that until you get into full pad practice, and even then, really games when it ramps up even a few more levels. But you mentioned Gibbs and Laporta. I do remember. I think we've talked about this before. Last year, you saw a few of the rookies out there, and you could see with each of those guys. One, you're talking about okay, fast, whatever. Maybe the speed doesn't matter as much, but you could see the way Laporta moved and his hands, even just. He's running and not being really defended. You can just see a couple of those things, and you can see with Gibbs too, the way he planted and changed direction. It's like, oh, and then accelerated out of that plant. Like, okay, that looks a little bit different. Can he see the hole? You have no idea. Will he be able to take a hit? You have no idea. Same with Laporta. Can he block? What's it going to be like going over the middle? But you can at least see, okay, there's a baseline level of physical talent there. And it was intriguing, and it was noticeable to folks. Do they have anybody like that this year? Then you're going to be able to at least get a tiny glimpse that maybe a couple of the fundamentals are there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, good hands are good hands, right? That's important. It's going to be interesting with Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think something that Dave pointed out is just that, I think we're expecting him to catch a lot more out of the backfield and be utilized in third down situations more. And he wasn't as productive really in that role. He ended up being more effective as a straight up running back because of his quickness and shiftiness and all that speed. And it'll be interesting what they do with his role, especially, in concert with David Montgomery, how they use that backfield, if it changes at all. But yeah, some of the guys, the guys that need to kind of, forget about the rookies. It's also about, the veterans, the guys who need to take the step, Jameson Williams, how is he with catching the ball? Is he continuing to progress? Is he just as fast? Jack Campbell, how is he in coverage? That kind of thing. Little glimpses, I guess, of what these guys are trying to work on, what they're trying to do. You're not going to know anything about the offensive or defensive line. We're not going to know anything until the pads come out with those guys. So, I remember, I think, was when Malcolm Rodriguez was a rookie, and I think one thing that stood out with him was he diagnosed plays very well. And that was, you don't always see that, but it was a little sign that the guy's smart. He knows what to look for. He plays off cues, all that stuff. We might see some of that, but yeah.
Yeah, when you think about the rookies, I mean, cornerback is maybe a little bit harder, but I don't know. I mean, if you're pure student, you could go out and maybe look and say, okay, how are they running backwards and then turning and running forwards? And as you like to say, Carlos, swiveling the hips.
Fluid hips.
Changing direction as you're going from back to forward or side and all that. So you're going to be out there probably diagnosing some of that. I'm a little curious about the draft pick out of Utah, the not hybrid, but the safety / running back, because it seems like they want to use him offensively. So will he get any time this fall? Is there a role? Is it a few plays a game for him coming in? You mentioned catching passes out of the backfield. Montgomery can do that too, but that's maybe a little bit interesting. I know we're not building or basing the season on a third string running back, but if you want to geek out, and that's where we are with these Lions, right? I mean, that's kind of the point. It's that they're good enough and interesting enough that you can actually, not that I'm going to do this, but you could go write a column about that and him in training camp, and people would be interested. That's just where we are.
You could write about the water boy in training camp. People would be interested. Yeah.
No.
Well, that's the thing is, Sione Vecchia, what I'm interested in with him is that it seems to me that that's a Ben Johnson pick, hey, this guy's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. I can use him, the little mad genius that he is. I can use him this way. I can use him that way, running back, catching out of the backfield. Whatever, that's you're right, Shawn. He's an interesting choice, converted safety into running back because they just liked what he could do. Who knows? He may end up playing safety at the way that they're dealing with the injuries. So, but that is the fun part of, right now we don't know, the team's taking shape. I can't imagine that he's going to get a lot of snaps at running back when you have Montgomery and Gibbs. Gibbs almost 1,000 yards of rushing last year, 10 touchdowns. I mean, where does he get the snaps? Maybe it's a little bit of insurance for those guys get banged up here and there, and he can fill in. But how those roles develop is what's interesting. How are they going to be used? But he's Sione Vecchia from Utah. He's an interesting choice and guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, we could go down the list of draft picks, but before we get into our first break and get into our next subject, I do want to ask you, I don't think we've talked since they signed Jared Goff. Maybe we've talked since they signed Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but what is that, $400 million or whatever they tied up in these three? That's not the exact figure, but it's a fair amount of money. And there's several things to think about, I think, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, because to me, the biggest message the Lions have sent is, hey, you come here, you produce, we'll pay you, we'll take care of you. And Jared Goff actually talked about that when he met with reporters last week, that it does send a message, whether you're a potential draft pick, whether you're a potential free agent, even if you come over to trade, that's part of the culture too. It's not just what Dan Campbell's building in the locker room. That's obviously really important. But what Brad Holmes and the front office are doing, and from the ownership down, right? That, hey, you come here, you do your thing, we'll take care of you.
Absolutely. That's all anybody cares about. They don't care, and we talk about this, and I think we disagree a little bit, but they don't care about really, honestly, winning and doing whatever. They only care about winning insofar as how it helps them get paid, whether it's going to free agency and having better value, whether it's staying and getting re-signed by the team. But how it's like any job. I mean, it's football, but it's any job. It's just whether you're making widgets or whatever, or scoring touchdowns, you want to go somewhere where that company is going to help you make more money, progress in your field. And that's a great thing for the Lions to do. And that's the magic, I think, really, of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, is just, we're going to be straight with you. We're going to tell you what role we see for you, what you need to do. And, you get more playing time. We put you in a position to be successful, hopefully, and you succeed. And either we'll try to pay you if we can, or you're going to have to move on. But you'll get a better deal. You'll increase your value in the free agent market. But obviously they have an idea of who they want to pay. Their offensive line, they want to pay, their skill guys. They want to pay, obviously the quarterback. So yeah, it does send a great message. And that's what people care about. They don't care about culture and this and that and whatever, free agents. They don't know anything about it. They just want to, hey, look, those guys are getting paid in Detroit. Yeah, I can come there. I can play well. I can get paid. Now, the interesting thing too is it's Sewell and St. Brown who are draft picks, but it's Jared Goff, who's a reclamation project who the whole NFL had given up on. And a lot of probably Lions fans, just everybody assumed he was a bridge quarterback a year and a half, really pretty much into his tenure. You know, he resurrected his career. He salvaged it because of the coaching, because of the organization, because of the culture, all that stuff. Campbell and Holmes and Ben Johnson had a huge part in that. So, you know, credit to them for helping this guy, you know, get better and not making this he was just a throw in. Now we got to find another quarterback and now we got to go start over. And so that's great. And once you have your quarterback, you know, Shawn, you know, you're good. That's such a huge key to the whole thing. And they have their quarterback. If they keep, it'll be really interesting when and if Ben Johnson ever leaves, what happens with Jared Goff, and if they can replace, you know, Ben Johnson with, you know, another Ben Johnson rather than an Anthony Lynn, if that continues. But yeah, it's great. It's a great thing, and hopefully that does lure more quality free agents. They haven't opened the pocketbook like your boy Gores. They haven't really just said, hey, we'll just pay anybody anything to come here. They don't want to be there, I don't think, and no team really does. It's really hard to buy your way, you know, to a Super Bowl. They're doing it the right way, but at some point, maybe they're going to have a chance to go get a top flight free agent, plug and play guy. Hasn't happened yet. I don't know if they ever want it to happen, but right now they're doing it. They're doing it well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they will be in that position. And then they're also, the more they win, they're not going to be able to pay everybody, right? And that's going to be interesting to watch.
Right.
Probably as soon as next year. I mean, obviously they're going to pay Aiden Hutchinson, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right? He's probably the next big one. But they've got some good players and good defensive players that are going to come up, and they're going to be able to afford them. You know, I mean, I would imagine they'd want to pay Brian Branch down the road, for example. But, you know, are they going to pay Melifon Wu? I mean, those are going to be some, because he's a good player. And they got a lot of good players, and you can't pay them all. And that's going to be really interesting. So they're kind of getting out ahead of it here, paying the guys not that Goff's a superstar, but relative to their position, Sewell is a superstar level player, right? I mean, I hate to say that. He's an elite player.
Right.
Same with St. Brown. Goff, I still think he's a touch underrated. That guy had an amazing year last year. He was really, really good for most of the previous year. Everybody thinks it was just when they started winning. He played well the first half. He did. That defense was historically bad.
Yeah.
The first half of the second season, I thought he played even well the last 5-6 weeks of his first season.
Right, when Ben Johnson took over, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, you mean when Campbell started calling the plays?
Ben Johnson was the passing game coordinator. Yeah.
No, he started. You're gonna rue the day you made the mistake of underestimating Dan Campbell. It's really.
I love Dan Campbell, but this offense is Ben Johnson's offense.
Yeah, not really. And there's a reason. Yeah, no.
I just for an experiment standpoint, I want Ben Johnson to leave to see what happens. Like, you know, to see, maybe you're right. Maybe Dan Campbell is the Wizard of Oz and he's been pulling the strings. Although if he really was a Wizard of Oz, Anthony Lynn wouldn't have happened, and he wouldn't have had to promote Ben Johnson.
Well, no, for sure. He gave himself. He saw it wasn't what he wanted, then he took over himself, which I thought was really interesting. But what were they? 1-6, or what was it? Was it 1-6? Yeah, they were. I mean, what else you got to do? You got to make a move. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about Tom Gores and the Pistons. And I don't know, if you want to talk about the Tigers, that's fine too. But we can also say that for a later date. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Girls and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Girls and Shawn. Hey, we're going to talk about the Pistons here, but real quickly, you'd wanted to discuss for a minute, or maybe mention a silly little column I wrote about the Lions' schedule and predicting their schedule using food as a sort of battle between the cities. And I just wanted to, give you the floor for a second.
Well, I had a bone to pick. The first game, Rams at Lions, you gave the Lions a win for food over Detroit food over LA food.
I did, but that's a karma win. I mean, I kind of not, if you'll pay attention to the tone, I acknowledge that it's ridiculous. LA is obviously one of the great food cities in the world, But I was just having some fun with the karma, or not the karma, just of, hey, they stole our pizza. You can get Detroit-style pizza there. And what are we taking of theirs? Nothing. I mean, you can say avocado toast, but that's Melbourne. You can say sushi, whatever. That's Japan.
Food trucks.
I mean, maybe you could say food trucks. I mean, right? I think I even mentioned the food truck.
Del Taco. We took Del Taco from them, too.
Yeah. I mentioned the food truck. I mean, you can't even take McDonald's. If I'm not mistaken, that's San Diego.
It's Bakersfield.
And is it Bakersfield? I thought Ray Kroc was from San Diego, but
he owned the Padres for a little bit. But no, the McDonald's brother started the. You need to watch. You obviously have not watched the great movie called The Founder with Michael Keaton in it.
Is that Michael Keaton?
Yeah, it's a great movie. No. Watch it. It is all about how he steals the business from two brothers in Bakersfild.
Yeah, no, I knew that I was just having some fun with that LA pick because obviously LA is LA. But the thing that makes LA interesting is
San Bernardino, not Bakersfield.
Okay. The thing that makes LA interesting to me is that it's a conduit for food from all over the world. I mean, and that's the thing I love the most about LA. You can go to whatever community you want where folks have settled from another part of the world, or sometimes even another part of the country, but and get food that is, I don't want to say an approximation, is pretty close to what they can get in their homeland. You'll have folks say that, and I think that's really an amazing thing. And then the mixing and mashing of all those different cultures to create all that wonderful stuff that's out there.
It's exactly. In LA, it's exactly what you get in the homeland because you have a lot of immigrants who start these restaurants and they're making the food from their homeland, and it's especially like it. I think the Mexican food in LA is interesting because it's so close, but it's different. It's regional Mexican, so there's East Coast, West Coast, Baja, all this stuff, Central. In Mexico City, it depends on where you go. In fact, there's different in Oaxaca. I mean, there's there's also a lot of Latin American food throughout too, and. It's funny. It's just having a lot of friends who are Latino and also Asian friends, same thing, Chinese food and Szechuan and Cantonese and this and that. So you really can. And LA's like, it's like New York, but way spread out, drive, you will find the food that you want to have.
No, and that's the key. It's funny. My niece texted me the other day. She's going out there for an internship in the summer and she wanted some recommendations. She said, and I'm willing to, she said, and I'm willing to drive. I'm willing to drive. And that's the thing. You have to be willing to drive. I remember I was out there for a work trip one time, and I was in downtown, I want to say, but I drove out to Alhambra because there's a pocket of incredible Chinese food out there, and this upper middle class community. It's interesting, whatever expectations or thoughts you might have, you go. That's what I love about LA too. I go to this strip mall for this bowl of Shanghai style noodles, and the parking lot's full of Mercedes and BMWs. Right? I mean, it's like, and I walked in and I was one of the few gringos in there, right? I mean, it was, and I love that about LA.
Well, it must have been a while ago because if you were in that parking lot now, they'd all be Teslas.
Yeah, maybe this was, I want to say it was the year Gerald Ford died. So that was,
holy moly.
Well, I went out and covered it. They sent me out to Palm Springs. I was there for football and I got pulled in the news side because I decided to be out there. In any case, yes, I understand your bone to pick, but no, that was just silly fun since they stole our pizza and we. I guess we took the food truck. I did mention the food truck in that pick, by the way. Yeah, and then it was Korean folded inside a tortilla, so it's a Korean Mexican mix, which is obviously fantastic.
By the way, if anybody knows, I'm sure a lot of people know Ackett's Pies here in Detroit. And for a little while, they had a little burger shop in St. Clair Shores. And we went there and they were, the guy who was running it, one of the Ackett's family members said he was trying to model it after In-N-Out. And it was similar. I mean, it wasn't the same thing, but it was, and he said, yeah, I went out there and I was just wowed by it years ago. And I always loved it. And there's nothing close in the Midwest or East Coast. So this is before Shake Shack too, expanded, but it's since closed. But he was trying to steal In-N-Out from LA.
Yeah, when we get in and out, then maybe I'll rethink that pick. And by the way, I think it's funny. I had a few readers email me saying, "What 14-3?" I'm like, no, that's based on food. When I have to pick for real, I'll pick 10 or 11. It's no, it's funny how something silly like that, just a made up food battle, can resonate with people.
Oh yeah,
it seemed to. It's good to be surprised. All right, you wanted to talk about the Pistons.
An LA segue with your guy out there.
Yeah. Well, the owner of the Pistons, I think he's in Malibu though, isn't he? Not Bakersfield.
Jeez,
San Bernardino. I think that's where he likes to hang out. Yeah, no, there was a story last week, the week before, I can't remember, that the Pistons' top guy for the general manager, but president of basketball operations, I guess is what they're going to call him. Whatever. The front office, the person in charge of the front office. How about that? There was a report that their top person, the person they want the most, is Tim Connelly, is the GM of the Minnesota Timberwolves, who was 3 years ago the GM of the Denver Nuggets and drafted Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., whatever. He put a contender together in Denver, and now he's put a obviously contender together in Minnesota. But what's amazing, Carl, is that there were in that report, I want to say it was from The Athletic, and Shawn, I'm sorry, I'm butchering that, but that they were willing to, Gores is willing to pay $15 million a year for a general manager. By the way, Conley makes about $8 million a year in Minnesota, which is a normal salary range for that. But to almost double it, this is what he did with Monty Williams.
Yeah. Well, you can't, for all the criticism he gets, he does not cheap, it's
no, he's not. No.
He just doesn't know what he's doing, but he's willing to spend. And it's funny, the frustration from like Tigers fans about, Chris Hill is just cheap, but he's kind of hiring sort of the right people, it kind of seems, and there's a plan, whatever. But with the Pistons, like the pocketbook's open, but nobody knows what they're doing and it's not working. What is the answer, Shawn? Do you think Connolly is the magician, the wise? I mean, they've tried everything, right? I mean, with Troy, they've tried it. They've tried it with Stan Van Gundy.
Yeah,
they tried. Where do they go?
I mean, it's. I think that's part of the hopelessness, because you really do. I mean, Troy Weaver. I mean, obviously that was a gamble, it was a risk. He hadn't been a GM before, but he came from one of the best front offices in the NBA. Stan Van Gundy maybe hadn't been the GM before, but he was a really good coach, and he brought a guy in to help him. What's his name? Jeff Bowers, who was kind of who ran the day-to-day operations of the front office.
Dwayne Casey, who had been coach of the year.
He was from Orlando, and Bowers had been in Orlando, where they had put together teams that made the finals, right? So, I mean, it's a good question, and I've thought a lot about this, Carlos, because look what happened to the Lions, right? Time after time after time after time. So does Gore. Maybe what Gores really needs is his Chris Spielman, somebody that just like, hey, somebody at the NBA level who's like, you know what? There are these couple of people out there, the Dan Campbell and the Brad Holmes, who have a chance to be something. And I mean, that wasn't Sheila Hamp, was it? Who found Holmes and Campbell? She okayed them and liked them after the interview and said, hey, I agree, there might be something to this, but how do you find that? How do you find that as sports? The thing about the Bob Myers, who's the former general manager of the Golden State Warriors, who's on the ESPN broadcast, and people think of him as a great GM. Well, he didn't draft Steph Curry. How is he considered? He didn't draft Klay Thompson. How are people thinking about him if he had taken over the Warriors when he didn't? They didn't have those two guys, and he's the one. He took James Wiseman. You know what I mean? And everybody's going to miss. It's not to say, hey, everybody's going to miss, but do you just have to, interview somebody, look at especially if you're hiring somebody who hadn't done it before? I mean, how do you do this? Doesn't it seem like you got to get lucky a little bit? Look, team building, once you have a couple of stars, that's a skill, and you can see that. The Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals right now, they traded for their two best players. They traded for Pascal Siakam this year and Tyrese Halliburton. They gave up their big guy, Domantas Sabonis, in San Francisco, and then put pieces around. A good GM can do that. The New York Knicks are built through largely trades and free agents. Their best player was a free agent, Jalen Brunson. The Mavericks gave up on him. So, yes, the GM, but how do you know? How do you know? Because maybe one GM does well here, and then the next time I don't know. I mean, how do you find your Dave Dombrowski? He won one world. What's he won? 2 more World Series with 2 different teams?
Yeah, because and I do like the idea, with Tim Connelly. I do, and I was in favor of this with the Lions, is hire somebody who's done it, But that's why I wanted them to hire one of the Lions to hire the Seattle GM or the Steelers GM, because they've done it. They have a track record, a long track record of being successful. And let's be real. This could easily have not worked at the Lions with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. They've never been, Campbell he'd never been hired as a head coach. He'd been an interim head coach. And Brad Holmes had never been a general manager. So, and everybody that you hire, they all come with, pedigree and they're well thought of, they're rising up the ranks and they're smart and everything. But there's a difference of having potential and actually having a track record and a resume of having done this. What would you do if this happened? What would you do if that happened? Whatever, there, like you said, there is some luck involved in the way it's worked out. And how do they work together? How does the GM and the coach, how do they work together? So I do like this, but I don't know if Arn Tellem might have been, I don't know what kind of advisory role he had with Gores, but you're probably right. If there was somebody like that for Gores, the only thing was that Sheila Hamp, the smartest thing she ever did was knowing what she didn't know and saying, I'm not going to try to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm going to try not to be a football person and be insecure. And I know football and I think this, let me hire somebody. She was obviously friends with Chris Spielman from way back when he was a player and, she was young and all that stuff. And she trusted him and he spoke to her in a way she could understand, explain the organization, explain football, explain all these things. He could decode a lot of these things for her. And she could give her approval or her consent or ask him questions and, all that stuff. I don't know if Gores is that person. I think he's like, hey, I've made $1 billion on my own. Why do I need to, I know enough. I can build an organization and a business. I don't know if he's willing to accept or to, say, I don't know that much about basketball and who can I lean on?
I actually think he is. And the bigger issue is, and that's why Tellem is there to a degree, right? And from what I've been told, just, sort of off the record reports, but from what I've been told, he's a little, not that he's second guessing himself, but he's a little gun shy, right? None of the decisions he's made have ultimately worked. And so he's not, why wouldn't you? It's just human nature. Why wouldn't you be a little bit?
Yeah.
God, how do I make the next decision?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not shocking that figures out there with Tim Connelly, because the last two GMs he's hired hadn't done it before, and Troy Weaver. So now is he going to go too far the other way? Oh, well, I'm going to go get a guy who built a team that won a title and has built a team that's in the Western Conference Finals right now.
Yeah,
and did it in his own way, and was a little bit unconventional in the way Tim Connelly put the Minnesota Timberwolves together. He took a lot of heat for when he did it, and it's worked out, which is great for him. So you can see that you could understand that maybe Gores would be a little like, what do I do? He's not afraid to spend, clearly, but and he wants to win. Does he have the feel of like you mentioned Sheila Hamp? Okay, she knew what she didn't know. She also knew what she did know, and that was, I don't like the vibe in that building. You guys, fine, fix the football, but I don't want to go into that building and feel whatever that Death Star feel was. I'm overstating it, obviously, but
no, you're right.
So she knew that. Does Gores even know that? Is he? This is a legitimate question fans have. Is he around enough? Does he have enough of a feel?
Absolutely.
For that part of it.
That is such a great point, Shawn, because I guarantee you that Sheila didn't feel like, she felt like she was being kept at an arm's length from by Quinn and Patricia. Like, this is the Patriot way. Robert Kraft didn't meddle. Bill Belichick did what he wanted to do. And that's it. And it was very secretive, very closed down. Very few people had their arm on the switch. And, but she felt that because she had an office in the building and she went to the building often. And that's what she knew. She didn't want that, no matter who it was. There's going to be better communication. There's going to be better, working together, all that stuff. And that's what Gores doesn't know. He maybe Arn Tellem can tell him, but it's secondhand. And that's the problem of having an owner 2,000 miles away, is you're just not going to understand that vibe, the culture, whatever, the feel of the team, how things are going, so that's that's what's always going to be a handicap for Gores. But yeah, I do. He hired Dwayne Casey, right? And he had a track record of winning and all that.
He did.
So, he's this is kind of the last hope, right? If he hires Tim Connelly can't do it, then what are you going to do? How are you going to fix this?
Yeah, and I don't know that he'll get Connelly. He might get Connelly just because of the money.
He has to, unless Minnesota matches it or something, But yeah, I mean, you come here and be a king, do whatever you. But that's the other problem too, is to give him that much money. You're giving him carte blanche. You're saying you're doing whatever you want, and I'm not going to meddle and all this stuff. And so you do give up some control, probably, even if you're Gores.
I heard the name Bob Myers floating around early on. I haven't seen his name attached in a while. And that was just probably wishful thinking for some folks. But I wouldn't go with somebody like him. He's done it in one place, but he didn't build the Warriors. He's an interesting dude and a big culture guy. And from everything I've read and understand, he was instrumental in helping to build that culture. But none of it happens without Steph Curry, right? And or Draymond or Klay Thompson. Who did build that team at the beginning of that team is Jerry West. He's the one that wanted Klay Thompson and didn't want to trade Klay Thompson. He's the one that when they got Curry, he's also the guy, by the way, that built the Lakers and the Shaq Kobe Lakers. He's done it a couple times. So yeah, they're guys with proven records of identifying talent. Right? And you got to get super lucky in the draft, but in free agency and trades,
he's 85. He's available. Go get him.
I know. He could probably do it again. I mean, no, that guy's a genius, right? And there are so I guess it makes sense that Gores is thinking I'm going to have to pay whatever it takes to get somebody who's done it and then come do it again. I mean, right? Why not?
Yeah,
you've gone with two guys, back-to-back guys that.
Have you heard of any other scenarios that are out there that are better other than Bob Myers or?
Well, I don't know that Myers would be the guy. I don't think he's. I know this is ridiculous to say. I don't think he's proven enough.
Yeah,
and just his he did make his best move was probably flipping. When Kevin Durant walked away as a free agent, he did a sign and trade so he could get D'Angelo Russell from the Brooklyn Nets, because Durant went from Golden State to the Brooklyn Nets. D'Angelo Russell just had a big salary, so it kept a big salary opening in that cap business in the NBA. And then he flipped D'Angelo Russell to Minnesota for Andrew Wiggins, who helped him win a title. And that was a really, really good move, good series of moves and forward thinking. So look, I'm not saying he can't, but I just don't know if he's the GM that some people think he is. Maybe that's not fair. But the other names were thrown out there. What the fellow from the Bulls? God, I should have done my homework. I just used their names in a column the other day, and I can't think of the name. Somebody from the Bulls. Who else, Carlos? Help me out here. This is ridiculous. You tell me what you think about the direction. Should he spend this kind of money or try
Mark Eversley? How could you not remember your own, Shawn? Yeah, I think the Conley thing makes the most sense. He's done it in two places. I mean, if Jerry West isn't available and 20 years younger, and I think some of the fans have talked about, bring back some of the Pistons guys, the Chauncey Billups or whatever. I think Chauncey was at one time, he was interviewing for GM positions, and now he's obviously a head coach. But I don't really love that idea, of not quite a retread, but let's reach back into the past, our glory years, and let's see if Dennis Rodman has anything to offer. It's so too nostalgic. It
is. I mean, Tayshaun Prince was the name, and
Tayshaun was another one, right?
He might be the one, but the other guys. Okay, so Trajan Langdon, that works with the New Orleans Pelicans, a former Duke player. I don't know if you remember him. He was from Alaska. I don't know why I always remember that. Dennis Lindsey, who's a senior advisor with the Mavericks, has been a GM before, and then Mark Eversley, the Bulls GM. But again, you look at what the Bulls have done. The Mavericks and the Pelicans have both put interesting rosters together around star players. Now, Zion Williamson has been able to stay healthy, in New Orleans, but it's the Langdon's interesting. Langdon's interesting, but Lindsey is interesting because look, Cade Cunningham, we don't know what he's going to be yet. He's probably just going to be a really good player, not an elite player. I guess you never know. He's still young. But, and I'm not saying he's Luka, but Dallas is going through a few iterations of trying to figure out how to put a roster around Luka. And they got to the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago, gave up Jalen Brunson, and it was great in New York. And now they've done it again, and they're back in the conference finals. And that's a skill. So anybody that's been around that, witnessed that. But again, Lindsey's, that could be an interesting name. He's got a track record beyond Dallas too.
Yeah, if you can't get Connolly, what's the other option? Or I give Gores at least credit for not sticking to. I don't know. I hopefully he's gonna. Is this gonna happen for sure? Is he definitely hiring somebody or?
Yeah, no, he is. He knows that he can't continue. Okay. He knows that he can't that Weaver can't keep making the choices. Whether Monty Williams stays or not, that's probably Gores' decision. If the new GM wants a new coach, maybe he can convince him. From what I've been told, Gores is going to be open to everything, including buying Williams out if the new GM wants him out.
I'd have to imagine if the new GM comes and, especially if it's Connolly and you're throwing all this money, he's got to say, I have control over, he might say, hey, listen, I'll keep him for a year and see how it goes. But I have the right to get rid of him if it's not working out because you can't not have that power.
No, you can't. And I can't imagine. So, yeah, you feel bad. It's a tough deal. Obviously, Gores cares, and to your point, he's willing to spend. It's just his absence and just hadn't had a feel. There's just been no feel for having people around him that have had the feel. Arm Tellem has had a lot of success in his life and in and around the NBA, but not necessarily building teams. Right. So, for better and for worse, that's no disrespect. That's just reality.
Let me ask you this. You've been around Gores a little, in little chunks over time. He strikes me as a different kind of a dude as an owner.
He's eccentric a little bit.
Yeah, eccentric. And I hate to say it, but I don't get a great vibe from him, from what little I've seen. I have not really been around him, but just, I don't know. How would you compare him or contrast him to like Chris Ilitch and Sheila Ham?
Well, Chris Ilitch, I'm not sure. That's a different deal. His dad's the one that built all that up, and you grow up that way. You're kind of, but Ilitch still seems. I don't know. Look, I've told you before. I ran into Sheila Hemp in the community I live in, just pushing a grocery cart in a little grocery store by herself. I cannot see Tom Gores doing that. Maybe he does. And I'm completely off base.
There's no way he pushes a grocery cart at Whole Foods in Malibu or whatever.
Yeah, or just even the little corner grocer, which is where I saw Sheila Hemp. It's just, right? That's probably the difference. And I'm not. That's not a judgment. I'm not making a character judgment at all. It's just an observation of how.
But you speak to their relatability, right?
Yeah, you do.
Even Chris Ilitch, I think, is somewhat relatable.
Kind of. People are frustrated with him because he didn't want to spend, right? And that's a different thing. And to your point, boy, Gores does. But yeah, whenever I've been around Gores, the way that people around him react to him and treat him, there's a little bit of a feudal feel to it.
Yeah.
When you have that kind of money and you're that removed, and plus he made his own money, it can have an effect on people. That's, again, it's not a moral judgment. It's just reality.
Yeah.
The way you kind of go, he's like walking on clouds, the way you go through life.
Yeah.
He's bouncing from cloud to cloud. With Sheila Hamp, I know she grew up in money, but for whatever reason, she just seems a lot more grounded and down to earth, doesn't she?
Yeah. If you go to training camp, you can see it walking around. She doesn't have some big entourage around her or whatever. She says hi to people. Even Chris Ilitch is spring training, he's walking around. He'll say hi to people, whatever, shake hands, and a little bit more insulated. But from Gores, it sounds like there's like an entourage around him, and I don't know how many people he knows.
I don't know how big the entourage is. It's just the energy of the people around him. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. It's the way they are.
Yeah.
Oh, right. And you see that sometimes. It's Gores isn't alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what all this has to do with whether you can run a team or not. But, who knows? There are lots of different kinds of owners from lots of different kind of backgrounds, folks who inherited, self-made, whatever. I mean, even when you say self-made, you're not fully self-made, right? People are helping you along the way somewhere. But anyway, no, it's interesting. And this is the thing, when you don't win, you start looking for reasons. You just start picking things apart,
Yep.
just like you do the opposite too. I was thinking about, I might write about this later this week with Campbell, if you do win, then you kind of retroactively go back and look at somebody and try to pick them apart and say, okay, this is why they fit so well. This is why they're one of us. This is why they're, we have a tendency to do that. Dan Campbell was hired and you don't know, and all of a sudden he's winning and, oh my God, he feels like he's been in Detroit all his life. But that's because you win. And without that winning, then, right?
Yeah.
So if Gores had been winning, then what is he? A fun-loving, courtside, beer-drinking, he gets a little buzz. Hey, it sounds like Harry Carey, whatever. I don't know. It's then he's a character in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, you're right.
And look at it. And look at the lavishness and the locker room and that practice facility he's built. You know what I mean? It's totally different.
Yeah. No, for sure. Absolutely. That's all. That's definitely part of it. Is you look for reasons of why people have failed, and you start picking apart who they are, their personality, their habits, idiosyncrasies, all that stuff. So, by the way, this is he bought the team in June of 2011. So it's going to almost be exactly 13 years. This has gone on a really long time.
It is. They've been to the playoffs, what, twice? Yeah, twice.
I don't think they won a playoff game even.
No, both first round sweeps.
Yeah,
first time to Cleveland. Second.
This is a long rebuild.
It is. That first team that Van Gundy built was competitive. I mean, they weren't a title team by a long shot, but they were a reasonably competitive, well constructed team. They just weren't talented enough to be super super elite. But yeah, no. The iteration now. God, I hate to keep using that word. The team as it stands now, I mean, it feels mismatched, not well put together. Who knows who's going to be really good? Who knows who's going to hit? They're way too young. They don't have the right veteran. I mean, it's just on and on and on.
Yeah.
So, and now they're about to go into what most folks think is the worst draft in the last 15 years. Who knows? There are always going to be a couple of people that pop. But all right, let's take one more quick break, Carlos, and come right back because I want to hear what your favorite thing is. It's been a minute.
Let's do it.
All right. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, let's hear it, man. You've had weeks to think about it. What's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing is being back together with you, Shawn. No, that's a total Shawn Windsor move. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to punk out. No, my favorite thing was I was on vacation last week and I went on a golf trip in West Virginia. I'm going to write about it in the Free Press soon. And it had been 3 years since I was last on a golf trip. Well, 10, 11 of us total. And I've gone with them for some friends, some family. It was a lot of fun, Shawn. And I haven't played golf consistently in the last few years for various reasons. And it's a lot of golf when you're on a golf trip. It's usually about 27 holes a day. It can get a little steamy, you get a little rainy. And I just, spending time in its one big house, basically, where we all stayed. It's just a fun, interesting dynamic that is almost a social experiment sometimes of how you have to, everybody generally gets along, but you put that many people together under one roof, and it's all these. You have to be careful of, not offending somebody, not but finding a way to get along. Compromise is definitely the big, main thrust of what leads to a good time over a few days with that many people. But it was very enjoyable, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. The last time I'd been there, the setup was a little bit different. So yeah, it was a good time, and I didn't play great necessarily, but it was. With golf, you just can't take yourself too seriously. It's hard. It's a frustrating sport, but having the right people to play it and to share that experience with, I was was very happy that I went, and I look forward to doing it again soon, hopefully.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I'll bet you had a few nice shots here and there, and that's all it takes, right? Just a few.
Are you talking about drinks or golf shots?
Well,
because it was both, I'll tell you.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I'm glad you knocked back some shots at the table as well as on the course and the fairways on the tee box.
I tried Fireball for the first time, by the way.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you've ever had that.
Thank you. It's definitely a young person's drink though. Anything to sweeten up and distract from the liquor, right?
Yes,
that's the idea. But all right, real quickly, my favorite thing is we've always had this sort of beautiful patio area, garden. We have vegetable gardens. We have potted plants and flowers. We have some in the ground. I hung some boxes on a fence that had fallen off, and I put some added structure behind to get thicker sort of structural screws, and I hadn't built anything in a while. I'm not a builder, but I can do a few things here and there, and so that was fun. But the favorite part is I've never done this before. I've never been the one to plant or even put the dirt, and the circumstances in my household have changed a little bit. So I put the dirt in, and with some assistance, with some guidance rather, where to put how much dirt, where to put the flowers, and I really enjoyed that. I don't remember. I hadn't probably done anything like that since I was a kid, when you had a little seedling and you want to watch something grow and you're in fourth grade or whatever. But I loved getting my hands in the dirt and trying to put the flowers in a gentle way to not destroy them. And that was kind of cool. So now every night I'm trying to do a little bit, just a little bit, just plant, kind of do what I'm told in that way. But no, that was great, getting my hands in the dirt.
Shawn Windsor finally gets his hands dirty. I like it. Well,
I got him dirty in the kitchen and greasy for all my life. But, I've always been the weed whacker mower, the violent person in doing the yard work. It's not the delicate planting of flowers and...
Yeah, I'm with you.
And lettuces. Yeah. So that was great. All right. Let's think. Who are we thinking?
Oh, we got to thank our producer, Robin Chan. He probably doesn't even remember who we are now. Executive producer, Kirkland Crawford, and editor, Illustrated Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, and Shawn, who is the most important person. We haven't thanked them for a while.
No, we haven't. The listeners. Sorry, we've been absent for a bit, but we're back. We're good to be. Excuse me, not good to be. Well, good too, I guess. But we're glad to be back. We're glad you're listening. Thank you for your support of this podcast. You can obviously find a podcast where you find your favorite podcast, Spotify, Apple. Rate us when you get there. Subscribe if you need to, if you want to, and let us know what you think. Carlos, we will be back soon, right? With another version, more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. We'll probably want to talk a little bit more about the Lions as we see what happens and unfolds. We're going to get to talk to Dan Campbell for the first time in a while soon. So we'll probably have some thoughts on that too. I know he's your favorite coach, right?
Second favorite after Ben Johnson.
Oh, after Ben Johnson. I thought you were going to say the LA Kings coach.
No, they got to find a new coach.
Okay. 3 years losing to the Oilers is enough. So that maybe that's why you're really wearing the Oilers shirt, to bring it back to the top.
I'm just going to go with the winner now. I'm just going to be an Oilers fan. I'll give up.
Yeah, I know. Maybe it's a common thing too to get the coach fired out in LA. That's nice.
By the way, one quick little aside was we were watching the NHL playoffs, Canucks and Oilers, and I'm hating on the Oilers. And the friends that we're with, they're mostly from Erie, Pennsylvania, and the OHL team there is the Erie Otters. They're a farm team for the Oilers. So those guys saw Connor McDavid and Draisaitl. I think Draisaitl came through there. So they're kind of low-key Oilers fans, and I'm hating them. So we had to keep the peace there, too. So it's kind of funny.
I got you. It's funny. My niece wanted to see Vancouver win just because she thinks, they deserve it.
They'll never win. They're just perpetual underachievers.
Yeah, exactly. So the Oilers are, one of the old dynasties. All right, my man. Good to see you. Good to catch up. And we will be back soon with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.